for a look at what is likely to happen at the G20 summit, we are joined by John Authers, the investment editor for the Financial Times. John, nice to see you.
Glad to be here.
So, as we just heard in that Deutsche Welle story, some Europeans are going to be pushing for much stricter regulation and controlling of hedge funds and rating agencies and so on and so forth. Is this something that the United States is likely to go along with?
There is quite a risk that we're not going to get a good agreement on a lot of these measures at this summit, because you're beginning to see big differences in emphasis arising. I think the reason the Germans in particular are stressing this is because that the Americans are trying to say that this should be about global imbalances, about addressing the problem that's now been well discussed, that the Americans were borrowing too much and the Chinese were lending too much to them in the lead up to the crisis. Also, you have to take into account that there are different national interests at stake here. If you're talking about the US sitting on Wall Street or the UK sitting on the City of London, they need to be quite a lot more careful about starting to regulate the financial services more toughly, given that they're getting a lot of profit out of them at the moment.
And with the worst of the global economic meltdown seemingly in the past, I mean, do you think that this sense of urgency to come up with reform, any kind of reform, is sort of past now?
Plainly, the extreme urgency that we saw in the first two G20 summits is past. People do now have the luxury of being able to disagree, to even allow the ideological differences to become that much more apparent. There is more of a risk that this summit won't achieve anything really useful than there was in the last two summits.
So the worst of it has passed, but the underlying structural problems that caused this in the first place, they haven't passed.
I would certainly argue that they haven't. You still have to look at the financial system. It was extremely over-concentrated, with power concentrated in too few hands before the crisis. Arguably, that's now considerably worse because the fitter banks have taken over the ones that were in more trouble. And similarly, if you look at those great global imbalances, similarly, the world's economy still looks as though it's somewhat out of kilter, very reliant on China for its growth. These are problems that will have to be sorted out at some point, even if stock markets have gained 60% in the last 6 months and people are feeling happier for the time being.
Right. John Authers, thank you very much.
Thank you.